Hello, WriteHive. Thank you for joining me today for Passive Marketing, How Authors Can Leverage SEO. My name is Jessica Salina, and I'm super excited to be joining you guys. I have a little slide deck that I'm going to get shared here. So welcome to Passive Marketing, How Authors Can Leverage Their SEO. So in case you're wondering who I am and why I'm qualified to teach you about SEO, my name is Jessica Salina. I'm an Indieverse Award nominated romance author. My debut novel, Not My Time, is part of the completed self-published River Peak Hero series. My next novel, Stuck on the Slopes, hits shelves with Conquest Publishing next year. And in my day job, I'm a professional digital marketer. I have experience with social media, on-page SEO, blog copywriting, video transcription, and both print and broadcast journalism. So you name it, I've probably written it. So to dive right in, you might be wondering, what is SEO and how is this passive? And I wanted to start here because I know search engine optimization can be very kind of mystifying for a lot of people. So I really wanted to make sure that we demystify this process here so that way you can have the most success possible in search results. So in a nutshell, search engine optimization, shortened to SEO, is a set of processes that is used to improve a website's visibility in search engine result pages. Usually when people talk about this, they're referencing Google, but this does not include any paid traffic through Google Ads. So when we're talking SEO, we're going to be talking exclusively organic, which is unpaid. SEO works by aligning your website with what search engines and their users are looking for and how they look for it. And when I say it's passive, I should say it's partially passive. So while you want to stay on top of Google's algorithm changes and regularly update your author website with fresh content, kind of like you would with your social media channels, once you set the foundation up, if done properly, you'll be in a good place to have your website working for you. So where this differs from social media management is you have to update your social media page all the time, especially if you want to keep up with the algorithm and to stay in your followers' feeds. But with your website, a lot of this is just foundational work, and you can just update it every once in a blue moon just to stay fresh. So there are a few benefits of optimizing your website for search. When you implement SEO strategies, this is going to improve your website's visibility, which ensures that your readers and fans can find you whenever they need you. And this is more important now than ever because right now we're seeing a lot of updates with social media. There's a lot of questions about TikTok's future. So it's really important that we make sure there's a place for our readers to always find us. Implementing SEO strategies will also increase your organic traffic, meaning more new readers discovering your books. And this also will help you build your credibility and authority within the publishing space. This will help you establish trust with both search engines and readers. So that's a win-win. And in case you're wondering how consumers search for answers to questions online, 88% are still going strong with search engines. We are starting to see a few starting to use AI chatbots like ChatGPT to answer questions. However, they're not finding them as effective, and a lot of people are still turning to search engines. However, we are seeing a rise of social media searches. We see this is particularly in TikTok and on Instagram, but a solid majority are still sticking with search engines like Google. And if you break that down on a generational level, we're seeing that the ones that are preferring social media over search tend to be Gen Z, followed very closely by millennials. But even so, 31 and 28% are not the majority of that generation, right? So that means there's still about 60-something% of Gen Z that is still preferring search engines over search. So while we're starting to see that rise in social media as a search engine tool, website is still going to be number one. And when it comes to the effectiveness, kind of how I was talking about a little bit with AI, search is still the number one way to go that people are finding the most effective when it comes to actually answering their questions. Social media is starting to gain on that. And a lot of that, I think, is because you're seeing more user behavior rather than AI usage on blog posts. But search still dominates here. So before we get too deep into how to update your website to be search engine optimized, I'm going to get into some of these definitions for terms that you're going to be hearing to also further help demystify this process. So what is a SERP? If you hear somebody say a SERP, that is just short for search engine results page. This is the page that a search engine will return after a user submits a search query. So ranking positions on a search engine results page can be highly competitive because users are more likely to click on results at the top of the page. And in addition to organic search results, SERPs usually include some paid search and pay-per-click ads. If you've ever Googled something and seen a sponsored result at the top, it'll usually have some small text that says sponsored. That's what that is. So other than that, and your website, other things that can appear in organic search results include retail sites, shopping options. You've probably seen this if you've ever looked up maybe a sweater that you wanted to buy. This is also true for books. So if you were to Google romance books, you might get some retail sites and the book listings kind of in a nice row that you can scroll through in order to browse some very popular romance novels. You're also going to see news articles in SERPs. Reddit threads are also starting to show up in SERPs more frequently, as well as YouTube and TikTok videos. So even videos that you're posting to your social media channels have a chance of appearing in organic search results. You're also going to hear the term domain authority, which is shortened to DA. Domain authority is a search engine ranking score. This was developed by a website called Moz, and it just predicts how likely your website is to rank on a SERP. The higher your DA score is on a scale of 1 to 100, the more likely you are to perform well in search results. However, I think it's really important to note here that this is not a ranking factor, more of a predictor. In my day job, I have a lot of customers who get very, very, very hung up over their domain authority score, almost to the point sometimes of sacrificing some quality things on their website because they're so obsessed with this number, when at the end of the day, it's just really a predictor. So I would recommend focusing more on other metrics, such as your click-through rates, your website traffic, things like that, because that's going to be a better indicator of how well your site is performing. If you'd like to check your domain authority score of your author website, you can do this for free. You can do so through Moz, which is like I said, the developer of the domain authority score. You can also check through SEMrush or through Ahrefs. And if you are looking to boost your website's domain authority, there are a few things you can focus on. I recommend focusing on quality over quantity when it comes to backlinks. We'll talk a little bit more about backlinks coming up, so don't worry if you don't know what that means. I also recommend focusing on creating quality content that people want to link to. So quality content is going to be key when it comes to boosting your domain authority, as a big part of that is people linking to it. You also want to make sure you update older content to stay relevant with your core audience. So if your website is a little older and you have some older blog posts, maybe they're dated, go in there and give them a quick little refresh, maybe some new information, maybe there's some outdated statistics in there. Give them a little refresh and that can help as well. And if you're just starting to try to build your domain authority, or if you're trying to increase it for an older website, just be patient. Building your domain authority can take a very long time. It's not an overnight process. God, I wish it was. But this is something that takes time. So patience is going to be absolutely key here. Another term you're going to hear a lot is NAP. This is short for name, address, and phone number. This is a big part of local SEO, which is not going to pertain to authors too much, but we still want to make sure that our NAP is consistent online for Google crawlability purposes. So for us as authors, our name and bio are going to be the biggest things we're looking at here when it comes to NAP consistency. And if you're using a Google business profile, which as an author, you're probably not going to have, you're not going to be able to use a PO box, but for your website, your newsletter, consider using a PO box for privacy purposes. A Google business profile is just a free listing that Google gives to businesses. It's what shows up when you search for something in the Google Maps search results. It's the profile that tells you all the information about a business. So for any of our booksellers who might be joining us today, this is going to more so pertain to you. Otherwise, if you're an author, you don't need to worry about a GBP. And then another big thing here is EAT, is you're going to hear this a lot, and it's not referencing food. EAT here is short for expertise, authority, and trust. So EAT is actually part of Google's Search Quality Rater Guidelines, which is the handbook that real people at Google use to evaluate the quality of search results. And then in December of 2022, Google actually added an additional E to create EAT. I still call it EAT for short since it rolls off the tongue a little easier. And in the context of EAT, you're also going to sometimes hear YMYL. This is mostly going to pertain to our nonfiction authors in the crowd. This is short for your money or your life content, which are just pages that Google deems could impact the future happiness, health, financial stability, or safety of users. So it's exactly what it sounds like. So breaking down the different letters of EAT here so we can really understand it, starting with experience. So quality content often demonstrates the creator's firsthand experience with the subject matter. So this helps prove that the suggestions on your website are tried and tested and that your insights are authentic. This was also added to help safeguard against AI blog posts dominating SERPs. So some ways that you can highlight experience on your website as an author is primarily going to be in your author bio. I recommend having an about the author page, and the info on that page, especially your shorter bio, should match your author bio on other pages, such as your Amazon author page or your Goodreads author profile, again, to go along with that NAP consistency. If you write nonfiction, some ways that you can highlight experience on your website is to share your firsthand experiences with the topic you write about. This is great blog post fodder. If you write fiction, you can also share inspiration with a behind-the-scenes look. An example of this in action is my debut novel, Not My Time, has a protagonist with post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a diagnosis that I share. So I have an article that I wrote on my blog that is for Mental Health Awareness Month, talking about how my PTSD impacted how I wrote that character and how it influenced my writing style. So those are just some examples of some things you can do there. Getting into expertise, the second E. So search quality raters have to determine whether authors have topical expertise when looking at our websites. So they'll ask if you have the knowledge, qualifications, and credentials required to give reliable information. If you are curious how you can include this, if you've ever written a query letter to send a submission to a literary agent or to a publication, this is probably something you've already written for your query letter in your bio section. So this is something you can include in your author bio, again, on that about the author page to highlight expertise on your website. When it comes to authority, the A in EAT, this just refers to your overall reputation in your industry, especially among experts and influencers in your niche. So for us, that niche is going to be whatever our genre of writing is. So Google quality raters are instructed to review the authoritativeness of the creator, of the content, and of the website. So what are some ways that you can highlight this on your website as an author? Book reviews. So if you have book reviews across various platforms, such as on Amazon, on Goodreads, on Google Books, etc., this can really help with authority. If you're a bookseller, reviews on your Google business profile is a big one too. But again, as authors, we're really going to be looking at review gathering. I know a lot of people say reviews help authors because they can help us, become better writers, when I personally think that reviews are a sacred space for our readers. So I like to say reviews help authors by helping us build authority for search. That is going to be one of the biggest ways that it helps us beyond being able to show booksellers, libraries, etc., that there's interest in our books. Another way that you can highlight authority on your website is by building a strong backlink profile, which I still promise we're going to be getting to backlinks. It has its own dedicated section. And for trust, trustworthiness is the most important part of EEAT SEO when it comes to Google. Quality raters must take the creator, content, and website into account, much like they do for authoritativeness. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can highlight trust on your website as an author. So if you have a blog on your author website, be clear about who wrote your content. This is most likely you. However, if you're working with any guest bloggers who are writing submissions for your blog, be very clear about who wrote that content. Make sure that they have their own dedicated bio for your blog. Most websites have in the blog settings section the ability to add multiple authors or profiles with little bios. So make sure that is filled out so it's very, very clear who wrote that content. Additionally, make sure any blog posts or web pages that are on your website are edited for factual accuracy first. This is especially true if you are receiving submissions from guest bloggers. Make sure you give it a really good proofread. Make sure any facts that are listed or statistics that are used are accurate before you hit that publish button. And following that same note, if you're citing any of these stats, make sure you're citing trustworthy sources. Some other ways that you can highlight trust on your website include avoiding hiding content behind a wall of ads. It can be very tempting to monetize your site. However, make sure you're doing this within moderation. If your content is just behind a huge wall of ads, it's going to be very hard for people to look through, and Google is going to be wary of that as well. Also, make sure that your website has a secure connection. This is especially true if you're selling copies of your books on your website. I know many of us, myself included, have sold signed copies on our website. So having a secure connection really helps Google see that this is a trustworthy site from a trustworthy author. And this is another way that NAP can be helpful in having it consistent. Having that contact information, even if it's just a contact me form that leads to your email, can be helpful here, as well as keeping that NAP consistent. So if anyone has any questions on EAT, now is probably a great time to leave some comments in the Discord. I'd be happy to answer them. I know that's kind of a lot. So as we type out our questions, I'll start diving into how search engines work, because this is kind of crucial into understanding what we can do to make them work for us. So before Google can serve your website to users, there's 3 steps that it needs to take first. That's crawling, indexing, and ranking. So with crawling, Google will send out robots that are also known as spiders or crawlers to follow hyperlinks on the website to discover new content. So if you visualize a giant spider web, that's the internet. So Google maybe is the mother spider in the center, and she's sending out a bunch of little spiders to go crawl the web to see who's joined her web, who's new. So this content that could be crawled includes anything from web pages, PDFs, images, videos, literally anything that can be linked to is crawlable. So when crawlers get to that web page or PDF or whatever it might be, they gather the information about that page and the follow links to other pages. A follow link is something that indicates, hey, crawlers, go to this link. So the only time you would really see a no follow link might be if it's a sponsored post. So if you're working with, say, an influencer or you're part of the Amazon affiliate program, you might set it as a no follow link. But anything else is fair game. Then those spiders will report back to find or to report what they found to Google. So if the crawlers find unique content, then they add it to this huge database of discovered URLs, also known as the search index, and that is the indexing process. And then once URLs are in that database, that's when the ranking process begins. So for each search query, Google has to try to organize those results from most relevant to least relevant. And that is how we get the order of results on a SERP. So in order for your website to show up on the front page of Google, you have to be providing relevant answers to what people are searching for. This is why at the beginning I referenced quality over quantity, especially for content, making sure your content is very quality based. So that way you're making sure you're providing value to users and you have a better chance of ranking on that first page. So getting a little bit more into the indexing process, because you're going to see this on the back end of your website. So as we just talked about, indexing is how search engines are organizing the information and the websites that they know about. Content that is not in the index has no possibility of ranking for a search result. And a no index tag on a web page will inform search engines to not index that page or website, which will exclude it from appearing in search engine results. So there's a few times you would use a no index tag. For most authors, you probably don't need to worry about this too much. But if you have any pages containing sensitive information, such as a shopping cart or a checkout page on the e-commerce portions of your website where you're selling your books, that is most likely going to be the only time you would have to worry about a no index tag. Some other times you would see a no index tag used on a web page would be if you have an alternate version of a page. Say you're doing an A/B, which is also known as a split test, where you're trying to see which version of a page performs better. To avoid getting a penalty for duplicate content, you're going to probably want to no index one of those pages. And then that way, if you're sending out both versions, say to a newsletter, see which version does better, that would be when you would no index one of them. You also might no index a page that is in staging, also known as in progress. Maybe it's not yet ready for public use. You're getting your website set up, you have a brand new page, but you need to see how it works and there's something you need to test, but oh gosh, I can't test this until it's live on the site. You would probably want to no index it then until it is ready for publication and for wider audiences to find it. So if anyone has any questions on anything that was just covered, now is probably the perfect time before we get into backlinks, just like I promised. So I'll give everyone a few seconds here to type any questions into the Discord, and then we will dive into backlinks. So what are backlinks? Backlinks help pages rank in Google search results. So when site A has a link to site B, that is a backlink. So site B would have the backlink from site A. So on site A's site, that would be an external link, but for site B, that external link on site A is a backlink. So what do I mean by that? There's 3 main different types of links. So when on your website, you have an internal link, that means it's a link to another page on your own website. So for example, if you go to my website, jessicasalina.com, and you see a link to jessicasalina.com/insert blog post here, that would be an internal link to one of my blog posts. However, if I were to have a link to the Amazon webpage to buy one of my books, that would be an external link to Amazon. And say another website were to link to jessicasalina.com, that means jessicasalina.com has a backlink from that other site. If anyone has any questions on that, please let me know. But it's basically just knowing where the links come from and who's hosting it. So backlinks really help, like we mentioned earlier, to boost your SEO by having content that people want to share. So a few different ways you can build your backlink profile as an author. Good news, you're probably already in the process if you have a published book. So your book being available on various retailer websites helps with this, especially if your website is linked in your author bio. This is also true for your Goodreads page. If your author bio has your website, there you go. You have a backlink from Goodreads. You have a backlink from Amazon. You have a backlink from Google Books. But if you want to really build this to go beyond just that, there's a few different things you can do. The best way to do this, in my opinion, is to write guest blogs for other websites. So if you're not sure where to start, you can try seeing if different editors, I've seen a lot of freelance editors especially, will offer guest blog spots on their websites for different writing tips. Some small presses also offer guest blog spots for writers. So my next book comes out with Conquest Publishing, and their sister publication, Wild Ink, I know is currently taking guest bloggers. So if you're looking for a place to start, check out the Wild Ink blog, because I know for a fact right now that they are actively looking for guest bloggers. And sometimes other authors will also allow for guest blogs. So if that's something you're interested in, that's something you can do. So if you're reaching out to somebody and you're not sure if they do, it's a simple cold outreach. Just ask, hi, was wondering if you are interested in guest blogs, if you take them on your website. If so, please let me know what those parameters are. And I also recommend having a few topics that you can suggest if you are reaching out for cold outreach. And then you can say, here's some blog posts I can touch on. Let me know if one of these, I recommend usually having 3 topics works for you, and I can get to writing. And then if you need to as well, so this would really be beneficial for both of us. It adds new content to your website and would provide a backlink for me. Most people that are familiar with SEO kind of know already that the main purpose of this is for backlink building. Some other things you can do if you don't want to write guest blogs is when you're building out your PR strategy, make sure you're incorporating news interviews and features, because this is a great backlink to have. If you're interviewed by a magazine or a news site, even if it's just your local newspaper or your local news station or radio station, they're likely going to share that interview right onto their websites. I know from experience, because I used to work at a news station, that a lot of that content that you see on air also gets shared onto their website so they can push it out onto social media. So make sure you're incorporating the news, talking about your book, talking about what inspired you. A lot of local news would be more than happy to share. There's a few different publications as well, such as Canvas Rebel is one that I've worked with that likes to highlight different creators and artists and things like that. So those are great places to start. And because they are a news organization, Google considers them to be a very high quality backlink. You also can include internal links on your site to your content. This kind of helps get that process started with Google. I also recommend when you're doing on-page content to make sure an internal link in a blog post, if you're including hyperlinks, is the first one. Let Google know this is the most important, is to your own website. So to that note, make sure if you're doing some internal linking, make sure they're well structured. This will help improve navigation and distribute authority throughout your whole website. So within the body content, hyperlink appropriate words contextually instead of just saying read more. So what this means is a contextual link is just a piece of clickable text, usually a keyword, located in the body of a paragraph that contains similar ideas or context. So for example, say you're writing a blog post about writing tips, and you mentioned listening to a playlist to set the mood, and you've already published an article on your website about how to create a writing playlist. You could link to that previous blog right in the word playlist. Any questions on that? Now would be a great time before we dive into Core Web Vitals. This section is going to be a little short because Core Web Vitals can be very technical, but I promise I'm going to try to make this as pain-free as possible and as simple as possible, and how you can make sure your Core Web Vitals are set up even if you're not a web developer. So what does Core Web Vitals mean? This is a set of metrics that measure real-world user experience for loading performance, interactivity, and visual stability of the page. Google measures 3 metrics for Core Web Vitals. The largest content paint, which measures your loading performance. This should occur within the first 2.5 seconds of a page starting to load. the interaction to next paint, which measures responsiveness. You should have this try to be less than 200 milliseconds. And the cumulative layout shift measures visual stability. You should strive for this to have a score of less than 0.1. So you might be like, okay, I'm not a developer. That you might as well be speaking a foreign language to me. What do I do? There's ways to have your website set up with this in mind from the get-go, and this is the perfect way to make your site work for you SEO-wise and to make SEO passive marketing for you. So a few ways you can do this without even having to do any bit of web developing whatsoever. You can keep your page load speed reduced by keeping images and videos compressed and not overloading one page with them. There's also a lot of WordPress themes that are customizable pre-built website templates with core web vitals in mind, and many of these are free. This is why, even though I work for a HubSpot marketing agency, I still recommend WordPress to authors because it is free and very easy to use. There are a lot of features that focus on performance that you'll want to look for, including optimized code, minimal JavaScript use, and support for responsive design. To take that a step further, here's a few that I recommend so you don't even have to go digging. I personally use the Sinatra web theme for my website, but I also recommend Ocean WP, Astra, which is what is pictured here, Hemingway, Neve, Hello, Elementor, and Generate Press. These are great, easy, free WordPress themes that author can use that are completely customizable. So now we're going to talk the bits that are going to be, I think, the easiest for us as authors, which is on-page SEO. So any further questions on Core Web Vitals, feel free to let me know. We're going to dive into on-page SEO here. So this is largely keyword research conducting. So for authors to get started, your genre is going to be the base of your primary keyword for your homepage. Boom, easy, done. So let's say you write fantasy romance. Some of your keywords that you're going to probably want to use for your homepage are fantasy romance books, fantasy romance novels, romantasy. Yes, I know they're technically different, but some readers might not know that, so make sure you include both, as well as fantasy romance author. So to conduct additional keyword research, you can use paid or free tools, work-in plugins, or just use Google. So I personally have gotten to the front page of Google for my primary keywords with my homepage just using free tools. I have used some paid ones in my day job, but you don't need them. So we're just going to focus on the free tools that you can use today because I know that as authors, our budget is often $5 in a dream. So some of these free tools for on-page SEO include the SEMrush Keyword Magic tool. This lets you enter a topic and it'll provide a list of the best keywords for you. Ahrefs also has a ton of free tools for on-page SEO, like a ton, like the list goes on and on. But my favorites here are their free keyword generator and keyword rank checker. The Moz toolbar is also a great free tool. This is a browser extension that will give you instant metrics when you're viewing any page or SERP. The Google Suite also has a bunch of free tools you can use for SEO, including Google Trends, which analyzes the popularity of the top search queries in Google, Search Console, which allows the webmaster, in this case you for your website, to check indexing status, search queries, crawling errors, and optimize the visibility of your website with a bunch of different data. And you can get even more data with the reports of your website traffic from Google Analytics. If you use WordPress, I highly recommend using Yoast SEO. This helps optimize your site's content and keywords on a page-by-page level. So if you're in a blog or web page in WordPress, at the very bottom, you're going to see a bar for Yoast SEO with all of the settings in there. It is super easy to use and will kind of give you some check marks to hit. We'll let you know how you're doing and kind of grade your page. So say you want to do some Google research via Google search. All you have to do is type in your query. In this example, I did romance books. And when you get to the search, if you scroll a little bit, you'll see this people also ask section. This is perfect for developing blog content because it's telling you literally exactly what people are searching. So what is the most romantic book to read? What's the spiciest romance book? The best romance series to read? These are great blog posts that you could write on your website. And say you're a romance author like I am, I might write an article of the best romance series to read, share some of my favorites, and then the last one will be my own, a little self-rec that you can use to boost your own series. Now we're going to talk a little bit about search intent. So when you're trying to rank on SERPs, your content should match the search intent for your primary keyword. Kind of like we talked about earlier, making sure that you've got that relevancy. So to do this, consider your target audience for a keyword. Is it readers or is it other authors or publishing professionals? Easy way to check this for free is to Google your primary keyword, do a quick competitor analysis and see what types of websites show up. So an example of this, say you're trying to rank for best sci-fi novels, but you're not planning on writing a listicle BuzzFeed style for that keyword, then your post might have a disconnect with the search intent because if I Google best sci-fi novels, I probably want to know the best sci-fi novels to read. Now we're going to talk metadata a little bit. Metadata is exactly what you see here in the screenshot. It is the title and the little description that you see on a SERP. So some best practices for this is I always like to use the primary keyword in both the meta title, which is where we see tips for writing fight scenes in science fiction and fantasy novels, in the meta description, which is this little blurb that we see next to the date, and in the URL. So in this example, my primary keyword is tips for writing fight scenes. You also want to use a clean and descriptive URL. So the example for this one, the URL is literally just my domain / tips for writing fight scenes. In your meta description, other than your primary keyword, consider including a call to action or a CTA to help convince people to click and visit your site. So the CTA in this one is try tips. Your meta title should be 60 characters or less, and for your meta description, keep it at 155 characters or under. Any questions on metadata? Feel free to drop them in the chat. Now for some best practices for the actual content on your website and your blogs. Make sure you include a primary keyword in your H1. This is short for heading 1. I also recommend you only have one H1 per page. I've seen people will include multiple sometimes, but your headings basically tell Google when it's crawling the page with the spiders, hey, this is the hierarchy of the content in the most important order. If you have more than one H1, as Google crawls, it's going to go, wait a minute, which one of these is more important? So I recommend you only have one H1. This is going to be your title at the top of the page. And then break up the rest of your content with H2s, H3s, and maybe H4s as applicable. I also recommend you use keywords in the body of the content multiple times. So if I'm trying to rank for romance author, it's probably not enough to just use the word romance author on a page one time. If I'm not sure how many times I should use romance author, I would maybe go to Google, find the top 3 ranking for that, and do a quick little command or control F and just search for that keyword, see how many times it's populating on the page. And then I could take the average from there. Some other tips here are to include a call to action or some form of conversion pathway at both the top and bottom of your pages. If you have a very long page or a very long blog post, you also might want to consider adding one in the middle. This could be something like to buy your book or to subscribe to your newsletter. I also recommend including images with alt text. And while you can use your primary keyword in alt text, please remember that this is an accessibility feature for screen readers above all else. So please do not include keywords in your alt text when it's sacrificing the alt text making sense for a screen reader. Also recommend breaking up large bodies of text with bullet points where appropriate for skimmability. For the same reason, I recommend including a table of contents. And also, again, internally link to your content where applicable and avoid duplicate content. So when you have duplicate content, that means you have 2 pages on your website or on your website and another that have the exact same content. I see this happen sometimes with guest bloggers. So if you're working with a guest blogger, make sure that it is completely original content and that they are not repurposing something they've written for somebody else and giving you the same thing. Because then Google needs to know which one it's going to rank higher. And if it's the same thing, it's going to have a hard time doing that, and you might get a little penalty. So make sure all content is completely original and nothing is duplicated. So here's an example of some of these tips in practice. I do have images in this blog post, I promise. They just didn't fit in the screenshot. But you can see I had an intro paragraph with my H1 above the table of contents. So where the screenshot starts is the table of contents, which I just have featuring my H2s, which start with consider your character's abilities. You can see I've got a hyperlinked contextual internal link here, some broken up paragraphs so nothing's too long, as well as some bullet lists to help break up that content further. If anyone has any on-page SEO questions, now is probably the perfect time to ask them if you haven't already. I did mention earlier at the beginning that you can use some of these best practices for social media as well. So I want to highlight how you can take search engine optimization and really go above and beyond with your social media channels as well. So according to HubSpot, in 2024, this year, more people will buy directly from social media versus other channels. That means 82% of people are planning to buy from social over a brand's website, and 84% will buy from social over retailer sites like Amazon. We're seeing this really rise too with TikTok Shop. So this is something I think that's definitely important to keep in mind as we're trying to sell our books online. And this is a great quote that HubSpot shared in an article that I wanted to share here. People use Google to find an answer to a question. On the other hand, they use social media to discover answers to questions they have not thought of yet. So if you're not sure what to post on social media, Well, we've been working on your website, getting some blogs, doing a lot of keyword research to get your website ranking. That's perfect. Now you have a lot of blog content that you can share on your social media channels, especially on Facebook, where you can share links directly, as well as on LinkedIn, that also allows you to put a link directly into a blog post. And a pro tip for that, Facebook and LinkedIn have both explicitly stated that link previews perform better than photo posts and get pushed more in the algorithm versus a link in the caption. So an example of what a link preview is, if you're not sure what that means, is if you look at the screenshot here, whenever you've seen a post on Facebook and LinkedIn, it looks very, very similar, where you've got this kind of like big banner of a photo that's clickable with the title of whatever the link is taking you to right underneath it. That's just a link preview. So highly recommend sharing all of your blog posts onto your author Facebook pages. If you have a LinkedIn where you're pushing your content, sharing it there as well. You can also share your blog content on Instagram. The way I recommend doing this is maybe use one of the images from your blog, include that on the post, or an image of your book or something relevant to whatever the blog post is about. And you can do what is called a microblog. So a microblog is where you have a kind of longer post caption on Instagram where you've probably seen this. There's like a long bullet list on TikTok Reels, or Instagram Reels rather, you might see people say, oh, top, insert here, romance books in the description. So that way, instead of listing them all out in the video, it's a shorter looping video with a very, very long caption. I've seen that trend happening a lot lately. Those are microblogs. So what microblogs do is allow you to take some similar content to your website and repurpose it on social media. So this is a great way to repurpose that content to get it out there more and to increase your reach. So there's a few ways that social media can help your SEO efforts. So this helps with increased brand awareness and traffic. So the more your content is shared across social media, the higher the chances of it being seen by a broader audience of readers. So while social media does not directly help SEO, it does not really impact your SEO efforts from Google standpoint, it does help by boosting some of your metrics. That does help in the long run. So it's more of an indirect help. Social media also helps your SEO by increasing your authority. So when users frequently see your brand on their social media feeds, they're much more likely to recognize and trust your website in search results. So this perceived authority can positively influence your website's click-through rates from search results. And an increased click-through rate is always a good thing on your website. This also helps increase your content lifespan. So content shared on social media continues to live on and be discovered long after it's published. This is especially true on Pinterest. I heard once that Pinterest's average post lifespan is somewhere around 10 years, which means that you have the chance of your post or your blog, whatever it might be, living for 10 years of being able to be actively found. This extended lifespan can lead to ongoing traffic to your site, as opposed to this relatively short-lived traffic spike that you see with new content once it's published to your website. So speaking of Pinterest especially, because of that average lifespan, it's really important to share blog posts on there if you're working in a social media strategy as well. And with Pinterest, I like to think of Pinterest as another search engine rather than a social media platform because of the way the platform is used. Because if you think about it, you're using Pinterest very similarly to how you use Google. If you're looking for book recommendations, if you're looking for, I know a lot of people use Pinterest for recipes, right? People are searching for exactly what they want to find on Pinterest and then getting those results with those large, those images that we all know and love that are that kind of vertical format. So with that being said, remember to treat Pinterest like a second Google, because it essentially is. So when it comes to best practices, when it comes to social media SEO, take your keyword strategy that you've used for your website and apply that to social. So you're getting multiple use out of your keyword strategy, which is great. That means you don't just have to use it for your website, and you can kind of repurpose a lot of this content. You can also use that keyword strategy in your bio on social media platforms. You can use those keywords in photo and video post captions. And if you're filming videos, especially for Instagram Reels or for TikTok, in the actual video dialogue and closed captioning. So say I'm on TikTok and I want to film a video promoting my book, I might hold my book up and say my superhero romance novel, because that is my primary keyword right there. And I want that to be picked up in the video dialogue in the closed captioning. Speaking of closed captioning, I always recommend you include captions in your videos when you can. Not only is this a fantastic accessibility feature, but research has found that viewers, especially on Facebook, are something around 80% more likely to actually watch your video in full. So that will increase your view time if you have captions, because most people don't watch video with the sound on their phones. Believe it or not, a lot of people, as they scroll Facebook, will have it so autoplay is off or audio is off as the video plays. So include closed captioning, because then you're going to increase your chances of people actually stopping to watch your video. I also recommend you include your website URL in your bio. This is actually the one and only way that social media directly does help your SEO, because this kind of acts as a backlink. So make sure you're including your website URL in your bio on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok if you've unlocked that feature. When creating content for social media, consider how-to keywords. So Statista actually found that keywords starting with how-to were the most searched terms on TikTok in 2023, with what is following close behind. And this is very interesting to me, because when I'm conducting keyword research for my customers at my day job, and when I'm conducting keyword research for my own personal website, I like to look at how to and what is keywords, because this is a very huge way that people search. And I think the fact that this is kind of transferring over to social media as well, especially on TikTok, is just very fascinating to me. I also recommend that you nurture relationships with your following in an appropriate way by responding to comments or creating Facebook groups. Again, if people are leaving like negative reviews of your book online, that's their prerogative. Not every book is for everyone. Just leave it be. But if you've got a fan that is just like leaving a 5-star glowing review in an Instagram post and they're tagging you, like that post, share it on your story, engage with them. It's going to make people even more excited. And don't buy followers. A lot of people get tempted to buy followers, but it is such a vanity metric, and what this does is just hurts your engagement. So please do not buy followers. So influencer partnerships are what I like to call backlinks for social media. So influencers hold a ton of buying power. Per Statista, 21% of Americans have reported to purchase something after seeing an influencer post about it. This stat is actually even higher in other countries. And we know that word of mouth is the most effective marketing channel for books, and according to 64% of marketers too. So word of mouth is number one, and I feel like influencers really fall into this category, right? Because a lot of influencers form very meaningful relationships with their followers. So I think that really helps with their buying power. So some best practices for this. Don't just partner with any book talk or bookstagram influencer. You want to make sure your audience is aligned so you can highlight that mutual value. If you're reaching out to an influencer with a cold outreach and you're not sure what to say, try this. Start by briefly introducing yourself and describing your book. Provide a clear connection to their own expertise and success and what your book is about. And then include a clear ask for the support of the book, including hashtags, social media handles, key copy points for them to use in a blog or social media post, things like that. Copy just being the actual written content on a blog or a social media caption. A mistake I've seen people do a lot in multiple industries, just working at my day job and at previous companies, is people will say, oh yeah, I tried to partner with this influencer and I sent them this product to review, but I didn't get anything out of it and they didn't tag me and they didn't do this. And then the question is, well, did you ask them to? Did you make that clear? Did you send a contract? And the answer is always no. So make sure you're including that very clear ask, so that way the relationship can be very defined. The influencer knows what you're expecting. You know what you can expect from the influencer. You can negotiate what you want to do, things like that. Also, don't send a PR box without talking to an influencer first. This could be a waste of your money, especially because some influencers might feel uncomfortable reviewing products they've had no intro to. I also have seen a lot of influencers explicitly state that they will get PR boxes sent to them completely out of the blue by a publisher, no context, no nothing, and they just don't know what to do with it. So make sure you communicate with them first. And when it comes to working with larger versus smaller content creators, it can be very tempting to work exclusively with larger content creators to spread the word about your book, because you're going to look at their followers and see this huge number, but they don't always have the highest engagement. Smaller creators tend to have more engaged, loyal audiences. So while the links shared on social outside of your bio don't count as a backlink, they can boost your traffic and indirectly benefit your SEO. So prioritize influencers with high engagement rates if your priority is to drive website traffic. There are tools on the internet that are free to use where you can plug in somebody's Instagram username and it will tell you what their engagement rate is. So it's a very easy way to check. So if anyone has any questions on social media SEO, now would be a great time to ask. I'll give everybody a minute here to drop some questions they might have into the Discord chat. And then we'll actually move into some frequently asked SEO questions that I get a lot. questions that I've gotten from fellow authors and also just from a lot of my customers at my day job. So that way that can hopefully preemptively answer some of your questions. So I'll just give everyone a second here. All right. So the biggest question I get from basically every single customer I've had is, how long is SEO going to take? So how long will it be from the time I implement all of these strategies and do everything and can finally sit back, wipe my hands and relax? Well, it takes a while. SEO is a long game, unfortunately. It is not as simple as posting something on social media and seeing the likes come through right away. So Ahrefs, which is a major SEO tool website, I've recommended a few other tools in this, but they actually did a poll of people to say, how long did it take you? And this is very much in line with what I've seen personally at work, just anecdotally. On average, it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, but can take a year or more. So that's why I say, if you're trying to increase things like your domain authority, to be patient, because this stuff takes a really long time. If you're like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed, where do I start? There's a few easy things you can do to get started. If you are an author who already has a website, start with your metadata. Updating your meta titles and descriptions can be a fairly quick and easy process. And this is a great quick win. Anecdotally speaking, exclusively, I don't have any real stats to back this up, and this could have been a few just like miracle circumstances, but I have noticed with a few of my customers at my day job that when I update their metadata before I go in and do a deeper on-page audit of a blog, I noticed that I have seen results happen as quickly as 2 weeks with their rankings increasing. So again, this is a quick, easy process, quick win, and this can get you some results a little more quickly. But again, your mileage may vary there. After you've started with your metadata and gotten that cleaned up, then you can make sure your images and videos on your website are not massively sized, so that way you can keep your page load speed down. And then I recommend you preview your website in mobile mode to make sure your site is mobile friendly, because there are a lot of people who will view websites almost exclusively on their phone or a tablet. If you do not already have a website and you're not sure where to start, set up that website. Even if you're not a published author yet, I recommend getting a website set up. This can be great to get started, and if you're not sure what to put on it, start by optimizing your homepage. You can include as many or as little details about your work in progress as you wish. If you're at the querying stage, this is a great area where you can kind of highlight, this is the novel I'm querying. Here's maybe the brief little description that I'm sending to agents in my query. Have that on your homepage, optimize that. And then after you've set up your website, got your homepage ready to go, that's when you can move on to keyword research to build out the rest of your site, determine what blogs you want to have. So for example, when I was getting started out with my author website, I actually got this started before Not My Time was published. So what I did was, just to get it started, just to get, on the ground running, I just did some simple blog posts that were different types of writing tips, how to set up a writing playlist, my favorite books that I read this year, things like that, just to get it started. And then once I had my book published and I had news that I was able to share, that was when I was able to start having my blogs be more tailored to my books. So a great place to start is with some of that blog content. And if you're wondering, well, I'm trying to promote more to readers, not necessarily other authors, that's okay. So when it comes to sharing content that are maybe some things like writing tips, that does still help Google with determining that, oh, this is an authority source. So having content that is slightly tangentially related to what you're mostly going to be promoting is completely okay. And if you're looking for any additional free resources that you can check out, here are a few of my favorites. Backlinko is a huge SEO website. It is run by Brian Dean. Brian offers a ton of SEO trainings. I believe most, if not all of them, are paid. However, the Backlinko blog provides more than enough info that you would need just to get started. But Brian Dean is a fantastic resource. I learned most of my SEO from one of Brian Dean's students, so his information is very tried and true. SEMrush is a huge SEO tool. Again, they're another one whose resources I was sharing for some free tools. They do that keyword magic tool I mentioned. Their blog is also fantastic. They have a ton of information about anything you might need to know. The Ahrefs blog is also a fantastic source for some additional free resources if you're needing to get a little more niche with some SEO information. And if you really want to deep dive, the HubSpot Academy offers an SEO certification. It is completely free to take any of the courses in the HubSpot Academy, and they have tons. So if you want to brush up on your social media marketing skills, they also have a social media certification course. They have a certification course for just about anything you can imagine that is marketing related. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that you take their SEO certification course if you have the time. None of these courses are super long. You can break it up, set up a free HubSpot account just so you can take these, and it will provide a ton of information and have you walking away feeling a lot more confident too. And you might also be wondering, okay, so I've put in all of these efforts to my search engine optimization, and this is going to take a really long time because it can take 3+ months, maybe a year, and I really want to get off the ground running. Should I also run Google Ads to help boost my efforts? Given, like I said earlier, our budget is often $5 in a dream, I do not recommend that you worry about Google Ads if you're an author. I actually, just as simply put, no, you really don't need them, especially because word of mouth is going to be our biggest push as an author for how we're going to get sales. And with that being said, click-through rates for paid are on average significantly lower than organic click-through rates on Google. So SEMrush actually does a state of search report every year. They haven't come out with this year's yet, but in 2023, they found that the average click-through rate for a paid result was only 1.8% on desktop and 0.02% on mobile. That is nothing. Meanwhile, for organic, it is significantly higher. You're looking at 45.1% on desktop and 43.1% on mobile. So again, do not waste your advertising dollars on Google Ads as an author. You don't need to. I really recommend that you just focus on organic, especially just building your website presence, getting your blog up to date, making sure everything is good to go, your page load speed is low, so you can really make sure that your presence online is strong and you're able to just have readers discover you a lot more easily. And if you go through all of this and you're like, okay, I put in the work, but my website still isn't ranking, what am I doing wrong? The first question that I think you need to ask yourself is, one, am I setting realistic expectations? So personally, I do not like to try to strive to be #1 on Google for my author keywords. And that's because I don't think that's necessarily realistic for me as a newer author. I think if you are, let's say, a horror author, you're probably not going to outrank Stephen King no matter how hard you try, because Stephen King is Stephen King. He's a household name. Multiple of his books have turned into films, right? The guy is just a household name, and he's been doing this for a very, very long time. So you're probably not going to outrank Stephen King. So with that being said, if you are setting realistic expectations and you're like, I'm just not ranking at all, something is wrong, there's something you can do on Google Search Console to get some answers, and that's just run your URL through there. So as you can see in the screenshot here, when you're in Google Search Console, there's a URL inspection, and it can inspect any URL. You just paste the URL in there. So if after you do that, if it says the URL is not on Google, that means your page cannot appear in search results as it stands. So there's a few things that could be going on here. It might just be that Google has not yet found it, and in this case, you can request indexing of the page. Or there might be a technical issue that you need to resolve. If there is a technical issue, Google will flag that to you and tell you exactly what it is that is wrong. And if you look at the technical issue that it lists and you're like, I have no idea what it means, there are a lot of community forum posts out there that will tell you exactly what to do, exactly what that means. If the URL is on Google, that means your page is eligible to appear in search results. It might just take a little bit of time to establish or improve your keyword rankings. So give it a little bit more time, be a little more patient. Like I've said, this can take months, but you can input your website in here just to see what's going on, get some answers for why your site's not ranking. And one thing you can do too, if the URL is on Google and it is eligible to appear in search results that you're not ranking, do a double check of your on-page SEO. Make sure your keywords are in there. Make sure your search intent matches up. Maybe give the content a quick little refresh, a little update, and see if that helps. Make sure your metadata is good to go as well. So in a nutshell, there are 4 things that you need to focus on to make SEO work for you. That is keyword research, where you perform keyword research to find what users search for, content marketing, where you create content that satisfies searchers' needs. And those 2 things go hand in hand together. So after you perform keyword research to find out what users are searching for, you're going to create quality content that is going to answer the questions that they are searching. And then technical SEO is making sure your website is accessible to search engine crawlers and also to users, right? Technical SEO, a lot of it is, like I was saying, about page load speed. You want your website to load quickly so that way people don't bounce out. A good way to tell if this is working for you is to check your bounce rate. Bounce rate is just how quickly it takes before somebody leaves a site. And the biggest reason that I often see at work for why people have a high bounce rate is because their website is very slow to load. They have a lot of images or videos bogging it down. So usually speeding up the page speed really helps with that. And then link building, where you're earning links from relevant high quality sites. Like we talked about, guest blogs, making sure news is incorporated into your PR strategies so you can get featured there. And making sure, again, that all goes hand in hand with that quality content. So if anyone has any final questions, I'll give you a chance to pop them in the chat right now in Discord. And if you have any that we can't get to, or this ends and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought of a question in the middle of the night, later, don't worry, you can reach out to me at any time. These are my socials. You can find me at jessicasalina.com. I am at author Jessica Salina on all social media platforms except for Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, where I'm just Jess_Salina. This is what my page looks like, so you found the right one. Look for the headshot of me in a white and pink sweater. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have if they come up after this call. But thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to speak with you, and I hope that you're able to walk away from this and have some increased website visibility through search engine optimization, and that you feel like it is less of a foreign language to you now and something that you're able to implement into your website.